First is a small feature in the Orchard Core UI Testing Toolbox, which is that we have this shift time feature. It just adds a single thing that it removes the default iClock implementation when the feature is enabled, and adds a custom one. And the custom one is really just a wrapper around the normal one, with the one exception that it has this shift property, and that's why it's set to singleton, the service, so you can access this across requests. And then when you use UTC now, then it adds this shift value to it. And the other features are exactly the same. You have this helper static method to safely update it when this feature is available. And how it works is that we have a controller where you can set this value in seconds or in days, and you would use this to change the time. For example, if you want to test if a feature would behave differently when a time after a certain amount of time. For example, if you have a subscription that would elapse or run out of the allotted time, or for example, if you have some kind of discount, for example, then maybe you want to use this to check how the site behaves after a certain amount of time when the discount would have run out, that kind of stuff. In here, we just have a very simple example where I just add the new widget that simply just shows the current time using just UTC now. And this shows that it basically, every Orchard Core feature that uses iClock is affected. Because now, if we go to the home page, it shows the current date. But if you go to this page using the helper method, and then visit the home page back, then the widget has updated, showing that the time has changed. So it's not a huge feature, but it can be really helpful when you need it. And it was something that I have missed occasionally from Orchard Core, so it was a good thing to add. The other two features I want to show are related, and it's something we actually use in one of our client projects, where we ended up using Orchard Core as a headless app. So there is a separate a developer who creates a front end for it using Vue.js, but as a single page application. So every communication happens through an API. And because of that, if we want to do UI testing, what we would want to do is to do UI testing in a way that we can interact with that front-end application. And for that purpose, what you can do is during configuration, I've added this FrontendServer class, which defines an application that would be invoked using just as a subprocess. And for example, in this case, we use this HTTP server, which is a very simple Node.js server. and it can be invoked using npx, which means that you don't even have to install it for the duration of this test. But as I said, in practice, we would use Node.js to invoke like Vue.js app or React, that kind of stuff. And you can configure this command, and this is invoked right after Orchard core is started up. So it actually has access to the to a port that we assign to it randomly. So you can have multiple front ends running simultaneously. And it also has access to the backend port of Orchard core as well. So it can refer back to it by passing it in to the whatever application that you have for front end as a command line argument. But in this case, the point is that now we have a different application and we can interact with it just the same way as we would do with any Orchard core application using the UI testing toolbox. So it is kind of a transparent way to interact with a front end. And that's pretty useful if you are the Orchard core developer inside who creates a test. But if you're not, that's why we have the other feature, which is the ability to run tests written in JavaScript. As someone who would develop in Vue.js or React, they would be more familiar with JavaScript, so it's more relevant. And what this does is basically just one command where you pass in a JavaScript path, and it and additionally maybe npm dependencies, and then it sets it up in the build directory as if it was a node project, and then executes the script. For example, we have here such a script, and I have added some sleeps, so we can actually see because it runs pretty fast once it has loaded in. But the point is here that you can use native Selenium JavaScript bindings and interact with the Orchard core web app after it has been set up as if it was any other application that you would test using JavaScript. So again, it's kind of a the point is to have these features. Should have actually paused it. So the point is that these features can more or less seamlessly interact with each other, and you don't have to always think about what kind of system I am in right now. And you can use this setup that we had here very in a way that if you remove these commands, it's very simple already. But for example, you can add the wrapper function to look at the test name and get the path based on that. So you can have extremely minimal amount of C# editing needed for each test. So you can hand it over basically entirely to the JavaScript developer and don't have to worry about overlapping knowledge. Here is an example that it actually opens in a separate window. And as you can see, it acts on its own, so it's fully automated. And how this works is actually not that complicated, because it just invokes pnpm for the setup and just the node.exe as for the actual execution. But for example, here, one thing that's good is that we have added this inspect. So if you have a node, you have a JavaScript IDE that you are used to, you can attach it and debug the JavaScript itself. Although unfortunately I can't demo that right now because I don't have it set up. But I think you can imagine how it feels to have a breakpoint inside the JavaScript code. And if you smoosh these two together, then you will have the feature where all the JavaScript stuff in the front end is done in JavaScript by the JavaScript developer, and all the Orchard core stuff can be done in the Orchard by the Orchard developer, and then they would only just do tests for the API itself and not for the front end. And I think that's about it, unless you have some questions about it.
Want to start? I don't want to start. Yes, I'm done once. Can I start? For the clock feature, we have a night clock, and this precedes any work that .NET has done for that, because in Orchard 1 it was introduced already. So we have an night clock also in Orchard core. What about using the new clock abstraction from .NET since .NET 8, because now we can use that, the time provider? Have you heard about it?
I'm not familiar with that.
It's iClock, but inside .NET, meaning there is first class support for these abstractions, even in the async timeouts and so on. So you can just pass your own custom time provider, the default one being the one based on date time UTC now, but you can provide, like you did, custom implementation for test or others. But
you would also have to implement that for Orchard core in the first place, right?
Well,
like you have to replace the main time provider with that or iClock first, and then for sure.
Yeah, and also it's not iClock our interface; it's the one in .NET. That would be interesting to use the official .NET interface and use that. We could still be backward compatible by keeping the iClock and providing the same implementation, but we will make it obsolete and just use the .NET one.
Yeah, I agree. And you can replace this clock to just use iClock, that iClock under the hood instead of whatever we have here. Current instant.
So if anyone listening to the meeting wants to start working on that, at least if it's made backward compatible, because we don't want to break anyone. We just want to switch our code to the new default .NET type. See if it's possible. Good, thank you. Anyone else? Did you add some test with archive later or stuff like that uses time in Orchard core?
Sorry, I didn't hear you well.
Did you see if it was possible to add some tests, community tests that will use the advanced clock? Or do we have that for the archive later feature? Checking if it's working. I'm not even sure we have tests for that.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
I will share my screen. Share my screen. This one, and it's open on a functional test. So your version works better because it works with C# and JavaScript. This one just works with JavaScript. But in case someone wants to add a test, this is what it looks like. Generate a tenant, in this case, log, create a tenant, and then to test. Can we visit the home page, and does it have subheading class and that contains this text? And when we go to the admin after login, then does it have this admin menu? That's the test it's doing. So if you want to add a test, like this is the setup, this is where you should add the files. And I'm seeing that because I saw some updates here. You see, info number, what's the best way to ensure that this is not breaking would be to add a simple test, functional test that goes create a field with this library, like the phone number field or whatever, wherever you use it, and then check that it's working. We can create a content item, type a phone number, submit, and save that. That could be just one or two functions. So validate that. Cool.